Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast, but not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, hello. It's great to be with you today. Both Greg and Deb are with you. And
hi, everyone.
Yes, it's great to be on this subject together that we wanted to approach every Christmas, now for at least a couple Christmases that we've gone through, and holiday season, as we say, because we're just approaching the holiday season. We approach some of these questions on the importance of family and how to stay in touch. And we are at a point where our holidays are going through some changes as we add members to our family. So we're kind of taking you on this journey with us. And so to kind of remind you of a journey as we enter the holidays, I don't do this a lot on these podcasts anymore, but I just really want to make sure that you know about the Summit book, talking about a journey to Hero Mountain, and the book right before that, which is Women at Halftime, that goes through the journey to that goes out to Hero Mountain. And so those are great books to consider to give for the holidays. So I hope you do consider those. So let's start talking about this subject together. And we've talked about a couple things. First of all, let's define like what we call holiday and about the holiday. I'm going to let you start with that.
So we were going to talk to you about just, building holiday traditions. And then we realized as you add in-laws and as you add daughters-in-laws or sons-in-laws, they might have different traditions. They might come from different religious traditions. So for us, it's always been Thanksgiving and Christmas, but we recognize that a lot of the same discussions are going to happen whether you have Kwanzaa or whether you have Hanukkah, right, or any other holidays. But these are about the family dynamics and the conversations that probably should happen just to help you build your own family traditions.
Right. And there's no cut and dry way to do this. And we are going through some changes because we are looking to add in the next year and a half, like 2 more members to our family.
Right. Two daughter-in-laws.
Yeah, 2 daughters-in-law, which is a little different, having sons and adding the daughters-in-laws, because usually in many cases, those daughters are a little closer to their mothers and to that sort of
Yeah, and then to complicate it, both of them live away from us. Right, one lives a 7-hour drive, and the other lives, a 7-hour flight away. Right. So, the daughter-in-laws are at home, mm-hmm, and we are the road trip.
Yeah, we are the road trip, and we're kind of an anomaly because we have one of us of a dad and mom. But right, all 3 of ours too have the in-laws that have a stepmom and a stepfather.
Yeah, they all come from divorced families.
Yes. So
now instead of there being, one other family, mm-hmm, for 3 boys, there's 2 other family for 3 boys. So there's 6 other holiday considerations that have to get, thrown in with the travel time. So we thought, our complicated holidays probably make not a bad petri dish in order to talk through and figure out how can you make holidays work.
Yeah, because we're doing the same thing. Yeah, we're exactly the same thing right now as we are facing these holidays. So first of all, let's talk about a little bit of the flexibility and the expectations that we would have. And the flexibility, now that's kind of hard because as we've come through, we've established some really great times together. Like the day after Thanksgiving, we would go to the desert, the boys would go out, and they would spend hours in the jacuzzi with their cousins, and they had a great time.
Let's take them back. Yeah. So, my parents and her parents both stayed together their whole lives.
Yeah.
So at Thanksgiving, the way the tradition worked out over time, it started with we would go through food comatose because we'd eat it at one parent's house at lunch and then the other parent's house at dinner. And so we were just...
Yes.
And then, I can't remember when it happened, but her parents started deciding to have Thanksgiving on Friday after Thanksgiving out in the desert,
Right.
which was remarkable because it extended Thanksgiving. We got to eat twice, and it was really just a lot of fun. Wow. The other thing is it became a tradition. You didn't have to make calls to everybody every year because you just knew that Thursday was going to be at my mom and dad's house and Friday was going to be at Deb's mom and dad's house out in the desert. Right. And the same thing kind of happened with Christmas.
Yes.
For whatever reason, my mom and dad put a great emphasis on Christmas Eve.
Right. And
her mom and dad put a big one on Christmas morning.
Right.
And so there was never any conflict. We just always knew where it is going to be on those 2 days. And, when your kids aren't driving yet and they have no other relationships, that makes the conversations about what are we going to do for the holidays easy.
Very easy. Yeah.
However, once you start getting, other in-laws and daughter-in-laws and sons-in-laws and, different traditions, suddenly we find ourselves needing to ask ourselves the question, okay, is anybody going to come for Thanksgiving?
Right.
And if not, what do you want to do?
Yeah. Should we go to Europe?
And the same thing's true about Christmas. When you've got trying to coordinate not just our 3 boys' schedules, but the 6 families involved with our 3 boys. Yeah. And that's not including us. There's 6 families you got to include to try to get them together. Right. And, the reality is there's a good chance that the 3 of them will never see each other on the holidays just because the demands from all of the other families are so strenuous, it just doesn't happen. And that would be unfortunate,
yes,
but it's reality. So, that's the kind of background to this conversation that we're trying to talk about.
Especially because we really wanted to approach this, I did at least, because we were working through it and I thought, we need to talk about this a little bit more right now and figure out where we are standing and with our personal attitudes, and because it's easy to go, well, then we're just going to do what we're going to do and we're just going to go on. And well, there might be a little bit of that, but but still, we want to not, I think for all of our sons, they all value the holiday time. They've grown up like that. They look forward to it. I mean, we still do stockings for our adult kids and they look forward to them. They can't, at
least up until last year.
Yeah, at least up until last year. So we'll see now, what this year holds. But but it was a big deal. They'd still be up early. We had these extra years with 2 of our adult sons that they were not in permanent relationships. So we had these extra years. So we were kind of getting real comfortable in that, Yeah. And now it's like, okay, so how do we adjust? And many of you are probably going through this much earlier than us. But anyway, we're just kind of going to go through some of our process because I think it doesn't matter what stage you're at, you're still asking some of these questions before. If you're going to make those holidays try to make them something significant and special for all parties involved.
Yeah, and the reality is you might only be able to make them special for a few of the parties.
Yes, and we're really realizing that now. So anyway, but everyone's unique. We've kind of covered that. And I mean, this does apply to other organizations as well, your colleagues, your work colleagues, and some of those organizations. But we're gonna focus on family because I think you'll get the principles there. Now, the process, committing to this process, I think you had that question with this commitment and process of the process and what it takes to stay in touch. Like as an illustration, this year for Thanksgiving, we made flights to go out and see one of our sons on Thanksgiving Day, and then we're going to plan something another time for the one son that's local. For the one that's the flight across the country, they will not be here because it's just too much of a turnaround. They'll be here at Christmas. But a commitment to saying, okay, we are going to make sure that we're giving a little bit on our end. We're going to come up there. So in that, I went ahead and made those flights, went ahead, blocked out the schedule to be able to do that. So I think that's part of that process and not just throwing up our hands.
And I think to throw out that the process probably starts in August.
Yes.
Because you got to start finding out, work schedules. One of our kids is a fireman. So, different schedules. If you had hospital workers or certain doctors, I'm sure work schedules would fit in. So, by August, everybody kind of knows their work schedule.
Right.
Sometimes you probably got to think through health issues. Is everybody healthy? Are they expected to make it through the holidays? This year, one of our soon-to-be daughter-in-laws has an elderly grandmother, and she just really wants to be there to make sure that she sees her. And, that's something you got to work through.
Right.
I can imagine that there'd be pregnancies or operations. Some years you got to work around. I think all of it, though, starts with a fundamental question.
Yeah.
And that is you got to ask each of your family members, okay, going forward, what do you want our holidays to look like? Because up till this year, holidays have looked like this. Going forward, what do you want them to look like? Given the new marriages, the new children, the extra in-laws, and, do you want them to look like the ones we've always had? Do you want them briefer? Do you want them longer? And by longer, if you're going to fly in from Ohio,
right.
You're not going to fly in for
2 days.
Well, for an 8-hour family gathering.
Right.
You're probably going to want to stick around, and as opposed to just flying back out, later that night.
Right. Right.
So, some of that stuff just needs to get talked about, and talking about it will help you hopefully create new traditions, and as traditions develop, you hopefully don't have to have a whole new complete conversation every year.
Yeah.
One of the nice things about tradition is everybody just understands that, we're supposed to be here on Christmas Eve, and we're supposed to be there on Christmas Day. Right. And the day after Christmas, we all do this,
Right.
And, that's the nice thing about traditions is it saves a lot of conversation.
Right. And that was great because I am such a planner. We were talking just yesterday about who's the spontaneous one. I'm not usually the spontaneous one, but in this, I loved this when you brought up asking this question, because that's the step before you plan of anything.
Right.
It's because you really want to make sure you get their input and their ideas and how they're feeling. Because I think our boys now, they're trying to, this is new ground for them, and going through a holiday.
Because they're trying to juggle meeting the expectations of two new parents.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Wanting to please their spouse.
Right.
And so, in the back of their mind, they know they've got to walk carefully.
Right.
But if you can help them have a conversation where they say, in spite of all of the other expectations that we have, here's what I'd like my holiday to look like.
Yes. And I think just giving those tools, and it gives us the tools to begin with, but we are in part giving them the tools to be able to work through it with their particular families as well.
Right.
So I think that's a really, really important part of today, and something that we wanted to accomplish of doing this podcast is giving some different tools to be able to move forward. So let's talk a little bit about, did you want to say anything more on that, on staying in touch? I kind of wanted to bring up the point of just to make sure there's regular communication, though. You don't want to bug them all the time. But we do like to stay in touch. Texts are just wonderful because the boys always respond to those texts. It seems, when they can, they'll respond to a text quicker than a phone call, and many times they will. But I think the actual staying in touch with them continuously in a non-demanding or just thinking about you today or looking forward to here's some pictures and we just bought a new Christmas decoration, or we bought pumpkins today, or something like that. So let's talk about that just briefly on staying in touch. Did you have extra ideas on that?
Well, just if you are staying in touch, a lot of these conversations become much more natural as opposed to
forced.
Yeah, forced.
Yeah. Because that's what you don't. And I tend to, because I'm a little bit more planning, I tend to just kind of come right on out with it. But they kind of expect that from me anyway. So the boys do anyway. But there's new ground here. So anyway, it will be new ground. Events that we look forward to as well, because I don't want to deny us as we look forward to the importance of family, staying in touch. We're very committed to our family, and I love my work, but I've really scheduled things around, the holidays too. I say no to some of the events that are on those days and some of those special times that I want to leave open for our family. I usually just say no every single year. I have for years. But we want to create events too that we look forward to doing.
Yeah, and I think what she's getting at is it's one thing to ask your kids an open-ended question. What do you want your holidays to look like?
Right.
But there's always a chance that the three answers, at least in our case, are not satisfying. That it paints a picture of a holiday that we don't really want.
Yeah.
Let's say all three of them said, well, we can show up Christmas Eve from noon to 2, and then we got to head to the other in-laws. So I said to Deb, if that was the case, I might just say, forget Christmas Eve. I'd rather go, to New York City and enjoy Christmas Eve with you watching the lights, or maybe go to a German Christmas Eve and enjoy the lights there. There might be, if the expectations get so low based on our boys' answers, somewhere you got to consider what you want your holiday to look like.
Right.
And the way we want our holiday to look like has pretty much been the way we've held it for the last 30 years. So, while there's going to be some compromise, I think you got to somehow, keep in mind that you are not throw rugs just to be walked all over.
That's a great point too. And each of our kids are going to go through this same step, at some point too, with as their kids come along and they are working with extended family, and just to enjoy that time. We have one of our sons that I would not be surprised if he's already getting the Christmas tree out, because he loves, they have a couple Christmas trees in their house, and he just loves Christmas. But coordinating all of the time together is a challenge, getting together and even though he's a little bit more local, there's still, because of the other side of the family and his work schedule, it can be changed. He can be forced in, what they do. If there's big fires, he works, and they're called in last minute, and they can't come home until, they're released. So there's certain challenges there that he has.
Right.
So in understanding that from our end, it makes a little bit of that disappointment, and I think we are just looking forward to creating something as special as possible. But we know we have to be flexible. And
that's kind of where we wanted to head with this, is that once you know all the cards that you've been dealt, then, create an event that everybody enjoys,
Yes.
even yourselves.
Yes.
So, but until you get answers to a number of key questions, it's hard to know who's going to be there, when they're going to be there,
Right.
and what kind of event can you really plan on.
Right.
So, but where we're taking this is we would love for you to create an event that all the family enjoys, that you enjoy, and makes the holiday memorable.
Right. And I liked that illustration that you put forward with where all the cards. Because really, with that communication, you can start, it's like a puzzle. You
Yeah.
can start putting it together. And I still remember after one Thanksgiving, and the boys came to me, and they communicated, all of them separately. Mom, we really don't like turkey. Turkey, and can we not have ham again? Because it seemed like we had that every year. And so we started having something different. I would buy this wonderful, the best beef I could buy, and I started doing that. It was the priciest part of the meal. But I started putting that together, and it was something they just absolutely looked forward to. So some things like this, and keeping those little things alive that help them remember, this is what it's like. Because we want to create times where they're not going to forget their past too.
Right.
That they remember those times and they share those stories. Some of the most special times, and I remember my parents do this. Now, both of our parents are also gone at this point. So we are really at a different point of our lives, that we are, I hate to say that word, the matriarch and patriarch of our families. Both of us, because we're older kids, the oldest kids. But we now are kind of watching that journey. And we've talked about this before. But I remember my father sitting back, and he ended up being a little bit hard of hearing. But he would sit back and he'd just smile, because he loved seeing the activities between my sisters and I, because we would get together, and all of a sudden we'd be just talking. And it was so much fun for him, and so fun for him to just sit around that table. And my dad was one who just liked to sit and talk. And Greg is a lot like that too. You will just sit and talk. I'm the one, okay, let me do this. I got this, all these things to do. But that was such a pleasure for him. And we're finding now, as we look at when we get, and there are times we get all three boys together, and then we will have extended, hopefully those times will continue. But when they start sharing stories, there is so much laughter, because their stories grow through the years. And that's what we don't want them to miss. And that's kind of our little agenda. If we can create those times, and like the weddings, okay, so looks like we have a wedding for sure coming up a year from October. So we are committed that we'll make sure all of his siblings are able to fly out there and to be at that wedding, because they get together at those sort of events, and there's just fun things that happen between those boys. So we want to make sure that, and your dad always wanted that too. Your dad communicated, share what he communicated about the two of you boys getting together.
We were probably, Dave and I were probably close to 50.
Yeah.
And my dad, who wasn't really one to, put his heart out there, pulled us aside and said, I'd like for you to do me a favor. And we said, sure. And he goes, I'd like for you to remain friends and spend time together throughout the years. And so we both looked at each other and agreed, and then we've committed, and we talk to each other once or twice a month and get together probably 6 times a year. So we've honored that in my dad's life.
And it's been great for you guys. It's just so fun to see these, the two brothers together. And what was really special too is just these past weeks where, and actually months, where we have our youngest now considering buying his first property, but he started to communicate now with one of our other boys about some of the details, who has gone through the process of development and gone through all of the challenges with that. And so keeping that sort of communication between the boys and connecting them together is a joy to us.
Yeah.
And so that's what we want, because it's supposed to happen that they will outlive us. That doesn't always happen in many families, but we would like them to keep communicating together, enjoying each other, learning from each other, and all of that. So, yeah. Any other things to add today?
I think that we gave them some things to think about.
And remember, there's an article that comes out with each one. I will sum up some of these points for you. I think they were very important. I really liked the points of putting the cards out on the table with the communication, asking questions.
Yeah.
And
remember that the key is trying to plan an event, and maybe 2 events, but at least an event where most of your family can bond and have a happy, memorable day.
Yes, and look forward to that time together, and to just to create a memory, a new memory of times to look back to where they can exaggerate on it some more later. And also, as our boys' kids are going to be different stages of life. I mean, they're going to be, we've got one that's had a big head start. So with all of that. So, and I want to remind all of you now to make sure you get the articles, sign up for the newsletter. I will say it slowly because Greg always tells me to say it slowly. goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Very easy. goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. And that comes every single week. And you'll also get an update on podcasts. Greg and I are on together once a month, so there's so much to look forward to. And I bring in one guest a month, and then I speak twice a month. So thank you so much for being with us today. It's always so much fun, and we will look forward to being with you again next time. And bye for now. Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show, and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.